I call this special meeting of the Menifee City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilmember August. Councilmember Leesmeyer.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Denver. And Mayor Mann.
Here. Councilmember August, would you lead us in the pledge?
Oh, certainly. Please, all of you in the audience, join me in the pledge of allegiance to our flag. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And are there any public comments on the agenda item before us tonight?
No, sir.
Thank you. On to our discussion item at hand. City Manager, would you take us away?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have one item tonight, which is to approve a four-party cooperative fire services agreement between the County of Riverside, City of Lake Elsinore, City of Canyon Lake, and the City of Menifee. Just some background on the interesting time that we have here. So we have an area service fire department, fire services, as you know. There are different stations throughout the county area that respond regardless of city boundaries. We have 4 stations, obviously, in Menifee. There was a station in Canyon Lake, number 60. There are 4 stations in Lake Elsinore. Over the years, that area coverage has been helpful to Canyon Lake based on their Station 60 running internally inside their city boundaries, with Menifee and Lake Elsinore responding at times. I do have response times and number of calls back to 2012, so 2012, 13, 14, and 15, where Menifee has responded an average into Canyon Lake about 480 times. That's actually not correct. That should be 77 times on average a year. Station 5 from Canyon Lake, or from Quail Valley into Canyon Lake. The City of Menifee, though, also gets services by Station 54, which is in the Homeland area, to the tune of about 300 calls a year. So the area coverage works that if the city boundaries are virtually non-existent, and the closest fire truck would actually respond to the call. So what kind of entangled this issue is the fact that Canyon Lake wanted to close their Station 60. So they didn't want to be a part of that area coverage through CAL FIRE and through the County of Riverside anymore. And so they closed Station 60, they went into a fire watch, and what we have now is an agreement with the county and Canyon Lake to provide services to Canyon Lake from Menifee and from Lake Elsinore for the next 12 months. In return for that, the City of Lake Elsinore, who responds 4 out of 5 calls, we would respond the other 1 call, and they put a dollar amount to those figures. It would mean that Canyon Lake would be paying the City of Menifee $162,000 to cover the costs of basically 1 paramedic firefighter. They're also paying the cost of 4 of those through Lake Elsinore, and wrapping up in 12 months then to allegedly begin their own fire department inside their city boundaries, which then could cause further issue with us because we would then need to do some sort of mutual aid agreement with them, and that would be through the county. So I'm sure you have a bunch of questions, but the item before you tonight that's been approved by the City of Canyon Lake, it is being approved by the City of Elsinore, I'm assuming, tonight at their council meeting, which starts at 7 o'clock. And we're doing this in hopes that the next meeting at the county would then approve this agreement as well, and we would move on for the next 12 months utilizing this type of service. The majority of calls that Canyon Lake was having over the last several years were medical calls. About 18 months ago, myself, the city manager in Elsinore, then city manager in Canyon Lake, met with County Fire and or CAL FIRE in the county. We described the situation. We asked them to modify the services at Station 60, which would allow Canyon Lake to put a medical squad only, and to have fire services through Lake Elsinore and Menifee We were told that that was not available at that time. So therefore, Canyon Lake went through the next series of what they've done to try to incorporate their own fire system and services. So I will ask for approval of the item for today, but I'm sure that you have questions that I can answer.
Mr. Leesmeyer.
Yep. My two biggest concerns, number one, and I think you've already touched on it, is what is the impact of this to the people of Menifee, specifically those being serviced by Station 5 and Station 68. If we have to basically subsidize Canyon Lake, you touched on that with the up and cover sort of policy that the fire department has. When one engine goes out, another one backfills that empty void. So I think my concern is alleviated there. The other one is financially. We had talked about the financial side of this, and I was concerned about language that might be lacking in this agreement that guarantees any sort of payments from Canyon Lake. My biggest concern is, why are we entering into an agreement with a city that has a history of not fulfilling agreements and leaving the CAL FIRE guys high and dry?
So those are very valid points. Hopefully we've addressed the first one. We have been making calls into Canyon Lake. I went back to 2012, again, through 12, 13, 14, and 15, where we've averaged 77 calls into Canyon Lake. But we've also received an average of 300 from Homeland, so that kind of offsets. If we want to start going down the road to how many we've done and how many we've gotten, it's probably not a good mathematical equation to look at.
Sure.
I think that balances out over time. But secondarily, I think your opinion on payment can be alleviated by us bringing back a new Exhibit A with the county that would take away that $160,000 that we would have to pay through our cooperative agreement with the county, and we can do that on October 7th. So in effect, what we would be doing is, in agreeing with this, we're agreeing that we don't have to pay the $162,000 because Canyon Lake's going to pay that, and we would modify our agreement with the county to alleviate us from that $160,000 payment. I believe that would satisfy what you're looking for.
I like that, because regardless of Canyon Lake ever paying the county back, we're still okay.
Correct.
Mr. August.
The question's been answered.
Mr. Denver.
Where I'm confused is that when Canyon Lake had the fire, last year, 2 years ago, when they were paying their bill, there was a certain amount of money that the county required them to pay, and it was an amount that was more than they could afford, and they couldn't, in their opinion, pay for it. Now, they're still going to get the same coverage, and they're paying less somehow. It's somebody subsidizing them. I think what you're trying to say, and it says in here that there's a small subsidy from, it doesn't say who from. I'm hoping it's the county, not us.
That's a subsidy number that I don't have, and it's not from us. They're still going to pay $1.1 million for their services. So what I'm gathering out of the whole situation is they're going to take that from reserve. They're going to make that payment over the next 12 months, and then when, if, and however they set up their new department, they won't have that additional cost, therefore in the future saving themselves the additional dollars.
What would happen if the world came to an end and we had to go in there twice as often as we average do
Then we're agreeing to do that.
and pay for it, and they don't?
We're agreeing to provide them services for the $162,000 that they're paying.
So that people in Menifee would subsidize them, or whoever went in, somebody else would subsidize them if they have more calls than they have had historically.
That'd be correct. And I want to remind you, though, to not get into that situation, because as I just relayed to you, Station 54, which is not in the city of Menifee, is in Homeland. It runs into our city 4 times the amount we've ever ran into Canyon Lake every
No,
single year.
You've said that 4 times today. I understand that. Where I'm going is that they're being subsidized by the county, it looks like, more than by us and more than by Lake Elsinore. But why can't
Yes.
why can't we get into this too? Why don't we just say, let's let Hemet come in, let's let,
Well, whereas we have 4 stations, I see where you're going, and I'd like to maybe get there in the future. I'm not sure that's a great topic for today, but I'll answer it this way. It's a little bit different because we have 4 stations and they had 1. So their 1 station couldn't even cover the amount that needed to cover around Canyon Lake. And so continuously, we were running in, Lake Elsinore was running in 4 times the amount that we were running in to Canyon Lake. So I don't know if I've answered your question or if I got rid of the question, but I'm hoping.
they're making out on this deal, and I think that's fine. They're making out on it at the expense of somebody, and I suspect it's the county more than us. But it could be us if there was more calls from that 1 station, from our stations, than what we expect. Plus, the number that we're getting is 1 fireman. That's very odd that one person was compensating for all these calls. That number doesn't, intuitively doesn't make 4.
So if we're running 77 times average into their city on an annual basis, and Canyon Lake is running, or Lake Elsinore is running 4 times that amount, that's where the number comes from. It's a number that's divided. We get 20%, they get 80% based on the call number.
I would have rather have seen it in the staff report that broken out that way too, instead of, a 1. I understand how the county bills us.
Unfortunately, that's how they do their budget.
Law enforcement does the same thing. They bill by hours or man hours as opposed to the number of actual warm-blooded bodies that fill a shift and what have you.
So that 1 body is 24 hours a day. It's not 1 person.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
And so one firefighter, we're getting credit for 1 firefighter for 24-hour period, which is the equivalent of $162,960.
365 days a year.
Right. So, did you have some other? Because
Go ahead, and then I'll come back.
No, go ahead. You have the floor.
How is it that if a policeman, that we only get 4 or 5 hours a day because they have to drive from Paris, they only work 40-hour weeks and all that, and that costs us $250, 53, isn't it? And how is it that 1 fireman, 24 hours a day, is 163? My intuitive feeling is that is just 1 fireman per year. His salary, is probably 4 hours a day. You're saying that's 24 hours? You saying firemen are that cheap?
I'm saying that it's coverage for 1 firefighter, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It could be a multiple number of firefighters at multiple ranges of pay.
Let me help you out. So what, hypothetically, what would it cost to answer a call? You told me a number that Grant had worked out. What is that number?
Well,
an average
Lake
cost per
Elsinore
call?
worked it out to $2,000 a call.
Okay, so at $2,000
But that was, and so
times 77 calls on an average,
Right.
we're still making money. Does that make sense?
we're still covering our costs.
If we achieve the historical average.
Correct.
Exactly.
I predict that at the end of 1 year, this is going to be discussed again. And I predict at the end of 1 year, we're going to have more information. And I predict that there's so many sides to this. If they can actually struggle through this somehow with a volunteer force for part of their services, and their costs are dropped by the amount that it has been dropped, I think we're all going to be looking at this differently than we're looking at it now. Or we're all going to be talking about forcing some sort of cost decrease, 2 people per truck, that kind of thing. Something has, this is not viable for very long, I don't
For
predict.
them.
For them.
I would agree.
What is their annual structural fire tax revenue? Do we know that? City of Canyon
I
Lake.
do not believe I have that number, but it is in the range of $700,000 or $800,000. They're
Okay,
paying
so-
1.1 million for the year, I believe.
So the difference between their structural fire tax, that's where our, no, I didn't want to say it that way, that'll muddy a thing. I understand, it seems to me from a revenue standpoint, why are we not just getting $163,000 out of their structural fire tax? Why are we, on the back end of our own contract, reducing the equal amount? Why?
We can do it any way you'd like, actually.
But, I mean, the preferred method is to
The
do it as
preferred
presented.
method, to me, would be to reduce our cost to $160,000.
Either way we get it, whether we get
Right.
a payment or whether
And-
we get a reduction.
And dare I say, we don't have to worry about getting paid. We adjust our agreement with the county, we shave off the fee that Canyon Lake is to pay us for our services, and we do not pay another dime.
Even if it goes above the 77.
There you go.
Yeah. Sounds like SB 107 math to me,
Yes, it does.
where our state legislature is
Can-
telling us that 107 is a good deal for Menifee.
Sorry.
I understand. I think this is, from my perspective, this is a one-year deal. It gets Canyon Lake another year to stand up their fire department. And frankly, some of you alluded to it very cryptically, but, to be honest with you, this could be somewhat of a precursor to another arrangement in the future with multiple agencies. And a deviation from the standard, dare I say, this is how we've always done it for 40 years comment, that another elected public official stood there and gave us a workshop on. Well, this